I have new gouache to play with. Some of you may have watched my live stream last weekend where I swatched and shared my first impressions about this gouache. I will link to that video in the description in case you want to watch that. But today we are actually going to sit down and paint with it. Swatches are one thing, but until you start mixing, especially when you're adding white and trying to blend the colors and getting a feel for the consistency, you don't really get enough out of swatches to get a feel for the gouache. We are going to be playing in my favorite beige sketchbook today. I'm probably only going to use 2 brushes today just to keep it simple. These are part of my gouache brush set. I'll put a link to all the supplies in the description. So let's give this gouache a try and see how it goes. Okay, first let me explain why I'm so excited about this gouache. It's because it's a very rare find. It's a hand-poured or handmade gouache made in the UK, so pretty local to me, and it's affordable. Usually, handmade gouaches or watercolors that are made in the UK are quite expensive, especially some of the colors that I use a lot. So when I found this brand was way more affordable, I instantly wanted to try it. And because they are based in the UK and they do a lot of art fairs, quite a few people have started sending me their links and asking me if I had tried it. So I reached out to them and they happily sent me a few tubes to try out. Now, I will say because it's handmade, that might mean there are going to be some discrepancies between batches, like maybe slight variations in color. But from what I've found, the colors and the color names are very, very similar to all of my other brands of gouache that I've tried. And each manufacturer is going to have a different recipe anyway, so you kind of have to try the different colors in the different brands until you find one that you love. For instance, a quinacridone magenta might be slightly more pink or more blue depending on the brand. Okay, we actually need to rewind back a couple months when I first opened this gouache. I was pouring the gouache into pans to let it dry before I traveled because I wanted to bring it with me as a dried gouache palette, like I do with all my other gouaches. And 4 of the tubes had extreme pigment and binder separation, meaning the binder, the liquid, the clear liquid that holds the pigment together came oozing out of the tube when I opened it. And that isn't totally uncommon. Like that has happened in quite a few of my other brands, just certain colors here and there. But it happened in 4 or 5 of the tubes in this set. So that was a little surprising. So that meant I had to stick a toothpick into the tube, stir it up, try to salvage what I could. I did make a huge mess, but I got it all mixed up. I got my pans poured. And I did test these dried pans a couple months later and they work great. I don't know if it's the binder formulation or the pigment to binder ratio, but they work really, really well as dried pans, which is exciting. And I am happy to report that the gouache has not separated in the tubes again since then. It's probably just something you have to watch with handmade gouache or watercolors. I'm not overly familiar with a lot of handmade paints, so maybe this is just an extra precaution you have to take when you buy them. So before you pour them into a pan, just double check that it's all mixed up inside the tube. Okay, so back to today's painting. Now, if you watched my live stream, you saw that as standalone swatches, some of these colors were extremely saturated, very pigmented, but they were a little more transparent than what you might expect from gouache. And it's not terribly uncommon for certain colors like Hansa or lemon yellow and quinacridone magenta, but it did make me a little nervous because I tend to gravitate towards really opaque gouache. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect in the painting process. Like some of the other high quality brands, Jackman's states that they don't add opacifiers. It's loaded with extremely high quality fine ground pigment and it's just packed with as much pigment as possible. The one good thing about having extremely saturated and slightly transparent color is that it makes it really easy to tint other mixes without getting too muddy. And so I'm doing my tests on beige paper because I really wanted to see if it would be opaque enough to do the kind of layering that I like to do. In both of these paintings, I'm mixing white or yellow ochre or buff titanium with pretty much every mix. So those are the really opaque colors, and because the other ones are so saturated, it was really easy to get the bright, vibrant mixes that I need while still making them opaque. I hope that makes sense. It's a little confusing to explain. Do you remember a while ago when I shared that video about how I kind of trick myself into painting more by using these little printed photos? And whenever I feel like painting, I just shuffle them around and grab one and paint. Well, I'm definitely still doing that, and it has been such a great way to encourage myself to paint more often. Okay, anyways, in order to test the opacity and the consistency a little bit more with this paint, I thought it would be helpful to do a study where I needed to layer a lot more. And especially because I like to use a dry brush technique and layer a lot of that up and really build up the texture of the scene. One thing I did notice is that there's a fair bit of brush drag or like stickiness when I don't dip my brush in the water. So in order to get the dry brush technique, I need to use as little water as possible. But in order to get the paint to flow, I have to use a little bit of water. So I did find that it was a little tricky to get the perfect consistency, but it was possible after a little bit of practice. So that's the thing. I mean, no matter what gouache you're using, it will take practice to get used to the consistency. But the thing I really started to enjoy with this gouache is that it was really easy to get that dry brush effect once I found that consistency. It was very repeatable. The other thing I loved is how opaque the white is. I think I already mentioned that, but honestly, it's just one of the most opaque that I've used. And with just a touch of water, I was able to get it to flow enough where I could fill in the sky. Sometimes when I paint a light blue or a white sky, it takes 3 or 4 layers to make it opaque enough, especially on the beige paper. But this one only took 1 or 2 layers. So, all in all, I have to say I've been really enjoying this gouache, and I'm especially excited that I have access to a locally made, very affordable gouache that performs this well. The only downside I see is that they have very limited range of colors so far. I'm hoping they expand their collection soon, especially with some more earthy tones and some more phthalos and cobalt turquoise and all of those colors that I really, really love. But for now, I'm using it alongside my other gouache, my favorites that I still use all the time. And it's just been a really fun addition to my collection. I have to say, I am very pleasantly surprised by this gouache. I have obviously shared my thoughts during the painting process, but I have been thinking about it for the last couple hours, and I just find that it's so vibrant and actually quite opaque, even though some of the individual colors are a little bit more transparent on their own. That just means that they're going to be really, really good for tinting other colors. So I highly recommend this gouache. I would say anybody who is in the UK or gets their supplies from the UK, you will be more than happy with this gouache. Jackman's have kindly given me a 10% off coupon for anybody who uses my code, which I will also put in the description. So if you're interested in trying it, you can get a little discount. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you again soon. Take care.